Picture this. You're traveling cross-country by bus. You're sharing the space with a bunch of people you don't know, reading their books, listening to music, sleeping, etc. And in the middle of the night, you hear a blood-curdling scream. You look up, and one of the passengers is being attacked with a huge blade. What do you do? Our case takes place in Canada, where Tim McLean boarded a Greyhound bus to return home from work. He was employed in Edmonton, where he worked as a carnival barker, which is so cool, and was returning to Winnipeg, where he lived throughout the year. Tim was born on October 3rd, 1985. People would describe Tim as a super adventurous, fun-loving guy who liked to make friends with all kinds of people. He wasn't shy and didn't have a hard time getting along with anybody. So one summer, a friend of Tim's asked him about his summer plans and if he would be interested in a possible job opportunity. And Tim was like, "I'm not doing anything. What's up?" And his friend was like, "Dude, let's travel with the carnival." And this seemed right up Tim's alley. Being a carny, that's such a fun job, especially for someone like him who loves to travel and meet new people. This totally fit his vibe. He was only 22 at the time, so why not take the gig? It's some quick cash and you're young. Live a little. While all of this was starting up for Tim, he was also in a relationship and about to become a dad. His girlfriend got pregnant and he had to make the decision to leave his summer job and head home to make living arrangements. Some of Tim's friends offered to cover his plane ticket because Tim planned on taking a Greyhound bus the whole way, which was around a 24-hour drive, and that just sounds not fun. But Tim declined. I guess taking the Greyhound wasn't that big of an inconvenience. So Tim boarded Greyhound Bus 1170 and picked a seat almost towards the very back of the bus, located pretty much right next to the restroom. This was a long-ass trip, okay? Every so often the bus would pull over to stop and everybody would pile out of there. People gotta pee, people gotta eat, and people need to stretch their legs. Otherwise, everybody's just miserable and irritated. The bus would stop to drop off passengers as well as take more on, and at 7 p.m. during one of these stops, a man named Vince Lee boarded bus 1170. But a little backstory because it makes everything juicier. Vince Lee was born in China on April 30th, 1968. He had immigrated to Canada around 2001 and officially became a citizen in the year 2006. Vince worked at Grand Memorial Church in Winnipeg, doing small jobs here and there. There was a pretty large language barrier between him and his coworkers, but despite this, everyone said Vince was a friendly guy and was grateful to have a job. When Vince came to Canada, he went to college and graduated with a degree in computer programming. But he just couldn't seem to land a job in that field. But ultimately, it's frustrating not being able to communicate with people. Constantly having to go the extra mile just to express the smallest thing, I can't imagine it was easy for him at all. He was also married. His wife Anna worked as a waitress and he needed to provide for his family. They weren't in the position to pass up money-making opportunities, you dig? In 2005, Vince was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but it would go untreated, which is not a good thing. Eventually, he and his wife divorced, and it was out of the blue for Anna. He left her a note saying that he was leaving and straight up dipped after that. Like, what a wild way to leave someone. It wasn't totally clear what Vince's plans were. I don't think he had one, to be honest. Sometimes you're in the heat of the moment, and once you're out of it, you're left with figuring out the puzzle. Vince ended up working a series of different jobs. He took jobs at fast food restaurants, Walmart, and even worked as a paper delivery man. He was doing whatever he could. Vince's boss would say that he was a hardworking employee and took pride in what he did. No one had noted any anger issues from Vince before. You know, he wasn't someone you took major notice of because he was pretty normal, whatever that means. Despite this pretty chill, shy guy behavior, Vince got fired from his job at Walmart over a heated disagreement with a few of his coworkers, and it was so bad they ended up letting him go. So around noon on July 29th, Vince Lee boarded a bus from Edmonton to Winnipeg. He was carrying a few pieces of luggage with him as well. At around 6 p.m., Vince got off of the bus, which had stopped in Manitoba. And since Vince hadn't planned anything further than leaving his wife, he didn't know where he was going to stay. That night, he ended up sleeping on a bench close to the bus station, just in case he had the inkling to jump on another one and leave. According to a witness account, Vince was sitting up on the bench at 3 a.m., eyes bulging open. He was also seen selling his belongings off to random people, I guess to make some extra cash. One was a teenage boy who bought Vince's laptop off of him for $60. The station Vince was sleeping at only had one bus that stopped there, and at 6:55 p.m. July 30th, Vince Lee would board Greyhound Bus 1170. The same bus where Tim McLean was sitting in the very back. When Vince first got on the bus, he picked a seat towards the very front, on the complete opposite end from Tim. The bus pulled over to a rest stop after a couple hours and people got off to use the restroom, get snacks, whatever, and this is when Vince switched up his seat. He marched to the back of the bus and sat in the seat directly next to Tim. People noticed Vince immediately because he was a tall dude with a buzzed head. Tall people just get more attention. It's the facts of life. This didn't seem to bother Tim at all. He was a people person and didn't mind having them around. He greeted Vince when he sat down, but kind of did his own thing. He listened to music and laid his head on the window. The bus left its rest stop and everyone was cozying in for the night. They were playing The Legend of Zorro on the bus, the lights had been dimmed, and everybody was ready for quiet time. Then, at around 8:30 p.m., passengers were woken up to the sound of a spine-chilling scream. Out of nowhere, totally unprovoked, Vince had taken a massive blade out of his backpack and started repeatedly thrusting it into Tim's neck and chest. Tim was doing everything in his power to fight Vince off, but the guy was on a rampage, and stopping someone in that state is close to impossible. Plus, it's super dangerous for other people to get involved. You're not exactly trained for these kinds of situations. The bus driver looked up, heard what was going on, and pulled over to the side of the highway. He shouted back at Vince to stop and put down the blade. The second the bus pulled over, everybody started running for their lives off to the side of the road, and of course, everyone was calling 911, trying to get in contact with the police as quickly as they could. Everyone was off the bus at this point, but the bus driver, Bruce, stayed on board. I guess he was trying to reason with Vince and calm the situation down. It's such a chaotic situation, he's just trying his best. That's when Vince took his attention from jabbing Tim and turned to Bruce. Vince started walking towards him, holding the knife covered in fluid. At that point, Bruce had to make a decision. Either stay on the bus with the possibility of saving Tim and potentially losing his life, or get the hell off the dang bus and lock his ass in there. And it's looking like a no from me, dog. In the middle of all of this, a truck driver passing by sees people standing outside the bus crying, screaming, and panicking. He pulled over to see what the problem was. And like that, he helped Bruce and some of the passengers barricade the doors so Vince couldn't escape. So now it's just Vince and Tim left aboard. All of the passengers who had exited the bus could see everything that was going on because of all the windows. But Vince was in there mutilating this man. Another bus that was following close behind with the overfill passengers pulled over to see what all the commotion was about. I imagine they thought the bus had broken down or something, but what an awful situation to walk into. That's when the bus driver from the second group, Bernie, had the same idea as Bruce. He decided to go on the bus and see if there was anything he could do to get Tim out of there. Unfortunately, the scene was too horrific for Bernie to take, and how could you blame him? He couldn't make out everything that was happening because it was incredibly gruesome. But what he could make out was that Vince had dug his blade so far into Tim's neck that his head was coming off. He was trying to take off his head. Bernie wasn't going to stick around, and on top of that, there wasn't anything he could do to save Tim. Vince had already taken his life from him in the most gruesome way imaginable. Bernie didn't want to be the next target. Fair enough. The only thing they could do was sit and wait for the authorities to get there. Bruce knew that Vince had to stay inside the bus. They couldn't risk him hopping in the driver's seat and fleeing the scene. Apparently, there's a switch that cuts off all the power to the bus, which genuinely could not be more convenient at this moment. So Bruce went and flipped the switch, and this cut all the power off to the engine. The bus was stuck. Vince decided to take a break from brutalizing Tim's body and went to start up the bus. He was trying to get out of there ASAP, but at that moment he realized what Bruce had done and he was stuck there. This really pissed him off. He got up from the driver's seat and started repeatedly stabbing and cutting into the door through the little windows, trying to tear his way through. At this point, you have both bus drivers, the truck driver, and multiple passengers barricading the door to make sure Vince had no chance of escaping. The police finally showed up with heavily armed negotiators. They start pleading with Vince to drop the weapon or throw it out the window. They wanted him to stop cutting into the poor man. It's disgusting, but they were not getting through to him. He even yelled that he was going to stay on the bus forever. I apologize in advance for what I'm about to say. Vince had taken off Tim's head and was holding it up, showing it to everyone standing outside. He was walking up and down the aisle, licking fluid off of his hand, cutting various parts from Tim's body. Around 10 p.m., the passengers on the side of the road were transported from the crime scene into town to be questioned. And super early in the morning, a Greyhound bus would take a group of these people to the nearest store so they could get out of the clothes they were sitting in. Some of the people sitting close to Tim and Vince had DNA on their clothing, and they needed to change out of them. After this, officials put them on a different bus and they were sent home. During this time, Tim had broken a window in the back of the bus and jumped out. Police brought out the taser to calm him down. I don't know if that makes sense, but regardless, they get the guy in handcuffs. But the rest of the team has to go on the bus and scope out the scene. They would find nothing but horror. Various pieces of Tim's body had been shoved into small bags and thrown around the bus, and there were very obvious parts, such as his nose, that were missing. But once Vince's pockets were searched, it was found. Tim's eyes were also missing, but they were never located. It was assumed that Vince had eaten them along with other parts of his organs. On March 3rd, 2009, the trial for Vince Lee began. He came in with the plea that he wasn't criminally responsible, meaning he acknowledged what he did, but that he wasn't in the right frame of mind to know what he was doing. He said that when he first got on the bus, he started to hear these voices and they were saying he was in danger. Then when he switched seats, he said he heard the voice of God telling him to kill Tim or else he would lose his life. At the end of the day, Vince would not be found criminally responsible for any of this. Vince was required to seek mental help per court order because he was dealing with schizophrenia and it was just totally untreated. People should get the help they need, absolutely. But Vince Lee was never criminally charged with slaughtering Tim McLean, which made lots of people very upset, as I'm sure you can imagine. But the judge agreed. Vince could not be held responsible for this because of his mental state. Vince changed his name legally to Will Baker, and as of 2017, he was completely discharged and allowed to walk free. He no longer lives in a group home and is completely independent. Now, what do you all think about this? Because to me, it leaves Tim's family totally abandoned. They didn't get any justice for this terrible crime, and Tim's baby grew up without a father. There are so many people that are affected by this, more than just Vince and Tim. Passengers, the investigators, the legal teams, the family and friends, all of these people are left without a sense of closure. But I do agree with what Canada's got going on. They want to help people. They want to provide services so that they can be rehabilitated and join society again in a productive, positive way. In the United States, however, it seems like we can't really get that through our heads, huh? Number 1 in the world for the highest number of people incarcerated? USA! USA! I say this ironically. Well, that was the tragic story of Tim McLean. I'm super interested in your thoughts about this one. You want to help these people, but you also need to provide justice. So many people were affected by this, and it's kind of bumming me out that a murderer is just walking free. You know what I mean? That's a wrap on that. See you all next time.